So, imagine walking into a room to say a final goodbye to your best friend.
Right.
You brace yourself at the heavy oak doors, and you're anticipating that, that familiar heavy scent of lilies and the slow, mournful dirge of an organ.
Yeah, the classic expected atmosphere.
Exactly. You expect the quiet, stifled coughs of a congregation sitting in those stiff, uncomfortable pews, just waiting to be told when to stand and when to sit.
Hmm.
But instead, you push open the doors and you are just hit with the booming bass of their favorite, 80s rock anthem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the room is awash in vibrant colors. There is a gallery wall of candid, hilarious photographs, and people are actually, well, they're standing around sharing stories and laughing through their tears.
It's a completely different vibe.
It really is. And it makes you ask, does that jarring shift in expectations feel wrong to you? Or when you really think about who your friend was, does it feel exactly perfectly right?
That's the real question, isn't it?
It is. Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast experience, and specifically to today's deep dive.
It is quite the mental image, that stark contrast between what we expect and what is actually, well, possible.
It really is. For generations, when we talk about honoring a life that has ended, there has been this overwhelming, um, almost suffocating expectation of rigidity.
Absolutely.
It is like an ancient script that was written centuries ago, and we all just blindly follow it because we just don't know what else to do.
Right, it's the default setting.
Yeah, the default. You walk into that room, you hear the same somber music, you listen to a traditional liturgy, and the focus is almost entirely, exclusively on the solemnity of death itself.
Yes, on the loss rather than the life.
Exactly. But as we comb through the research and the really profound insights we are unpacking today, that rigid script is essentially being tossed out the window.
Which is fascinating to see unfold.
It really is. We are looking at a landscape of memorialization that is completely shifting beneath our feet.
It is a profound paradigm shift. I mean, both culturally and psychologically. We are moving away from an antiquated model where grieving families essentially try to force-fit their loved one into a pre-existing one-size-fits-all mold.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. And instead, we are entering an era where the individual's actual life, their quirks, their passions, their humor, dictates the entire shape, tone, and feel of the ceremony.
And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now, because I know that at first glance, doing a deep dive into funeral planning might seem, well, inherently heavy.
Sure, an intimidating subject.
It is. It might seem like a morbid topic, maybe even a little daunting to listen to on your commute or, while you're doing the dishes.
Right.
But stick with us, because as we dug into this material, what we actually found was a surprisingly beautiful, incredibly universal exploration of human connection.
It really surprised me, too.
Yeah. Right. This isn't just about death. This is an exploration of how we capture, how we honor, and how we manage to tell the unique, complex story of a human life. It is about storytelling in its most vital, essential form.
That is just the perfect way to frame it. Storytelling is the core of the human experience. And the overarching aha moment that really emerges from all of this information is this fundamental concept. Traditional services provide structure, but personalization adds depth.
Oh, I love that. Structure versus depth.
Exactly. And this entire deep dive isn't about throwing tradition away or, disrespecting the old ways. We aren't saying the classic rituals are wrong.
No, not at all.
What we were exploring is how to take that comforting structure and transform the ceremony into a bespoke, deeply heartfelt reflection of who that person actually was in the world.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's really get into the mechanics of this. Because the transition from a standard service to a personalized one doesn't just, happen by accident.
No, it takes work.
Right. It requires a very intentional blueprint. And the very first step, the absolute foundation of any personalized service, begins with capturing the individual's unique story.
The narrative blueprint.
Yes, the narrative blueprint. But I have to admit, that sounds incredibly overwhelming. I mean, how on earth do you compress 80 years of a human life into a single cohesive narrative?
It is an incredible challenge, and it requires a massive shift in how we think about legacy. Because before you even think about picking a venue, before you choose a single song, or before you even worry about printing a program, you have to understand the narrative arc of the person's life.
So what does that actually look like?
Well, it involves taking an inventory of their background, their achievements, their passions, and probably most importantly, the specific nuanced roles they played in the lives of others.
So we are talking about gathering memories, photos, and anecdotes from relatives and friends.
Mm-hmm.
But what struck me as I was reviewing the material is that they aren't just looking for a chronological timeline.
Right, it's not a resume.
Exactly. They aren't just looking for, born here, worked here, died here. They are looking for specific defining traits.
Yes, the essence of the person.
Was this person fundamentally known for their sarcastic humor, their extreme, quiet generosity, or maybe their artistic creativity, their stubborn resilience?
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is if we look at the cognitive and psychological function of this step, it is absolutely mind-blowing.
Really? How so?
Well, why is establishing this specific narrative so crucial?
Mm.
Because without it, a funeral runs the risk of just being a series of disconnected, albeit pleasant, elements.
Like a random assortment of nice things.
Exactly. You might have a nice song here, a beautiful reading there, a pretty flower arrangement in the corner, but they don't mean anything collectively.
Right, there's no through line.
Yes. By defining the overarching tone of the person's life, by literally asking the community, hey, what was the defining characteristic of this human being? The family creates a cohesive, intentional framework.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that framework then becomes the filter through which literally every other decision is made.
Okay, I want to use an analogy here. Because a traditional funeral, the way we've always known it, is essentially like filling out a pre-printed form.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
You have a template, name goes here, date of birth goes here, standard hymn number 4 goes here, standard scripture reading goes here. You just fill in the blanks.
Very plug and play.
Right. Whereas a personalized service is more like directing a custom biographical documentary. You are the director, and you have to decide what makes the final cut.
You're curating the story.
Exactly. But let me push back on this idea of defining someone by a few traits. Doesn't that risk reducing a beautifully complex human being into a caricature?
That's a fair point.
I mean, I love to joke around, but I wouldn't want my entire life boiled down to just, the funny guy.
That is a very valid concern, and it's where the collaborative nature of this process becomes so critical. It isn't about reducing them to a caricature. It is about finding the through line that connects the various facets of their life.
So it's more about integration.
Yes. And if we look closely at how this gathering of anecdotes actually happens, we uncover a hidden psychological benefit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This phase isn't just about administrative preparation or data collection. This collaborative gathering of stories is actually the vital first step in the communal grieving and healing process.
Wait, explain that. How is the planning process itself a form of healing?
Think about what happens in those immediate days after a profound loss.
It's chaos.
It is. The brain is often in a state of shock. There's a sense of paralysis. But when the family reaches out to the community to gather these stories, an incredible kinetic energy is generated.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. Long before the actual service takes place, you have people calling each other. You have old friends texting each other, saying, hey, do you remember the time she organized that disastrous camping trip, but somehow made it the best weekend ever?
Ah, yeah.
Or, I was just thinking about his strange lifelong obsession with restoring classic cars.
So they are forced to actively engage with the memory of the person, rather than just sitting in silence with their grief.
Precisely. It forces the community to begin sharing and processing their loss through narrative. They are actively synthesizing the person's legacy in real time.
That's actually beautiful.
It is. By the time the actual service arrives, the attendees have already begun the hard cognitive work of contextualizing the loss. When everyone contributes a piece of the puzzle, the final picture that emerges isn't a caricature at all.
It's a fully fleshed out portrait.
Exactly. It is undeniably authentic, multidimensional, and it rings true to everyone who eventually sits in those chairs on the day of the memorial.
That makes perfect sense. The planning isn't a burden, it is a therapeutic mechanism.
Exactly.
Okay, so once you have that script, that core story of who this person was, the next logical step is figuring out how to broadcast that story to the people attending.
Right, the execution.
Which brings us to the most visceral part of the experience, engaging the senses. We are talking about utilizing music, visual displays, and overarching environmental themes to physically change how the room feels.
This is where the emotional resonance of the service is truly built. Because the environment dictates the emotional response.
It really does.
And music, from a neurological standpoint, is arguably the most powerful tool we have to personalize a space and immediately bypass the logical guarded centers of the brain.
Right. And the shift here is massive. We are stepping away from the default setting of solemn, traditional hymns played on an organ.
Thankfully, in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Families are now choosing favorite genres, specific artists, or songs that held deep meaning for the person. We are seeing everything from jazz to country to classic rock.
I've even seen EDM.
Really? Wow. And even live family performances where a grandchild might play an acoustic guitar.
That's always so moving.
It is. But let me challenge this. Traditionally, the music at a funeral is specifically designed to be somber. It is meant to reflect the heavy gravity of death.
Yes.
So if we step away from a solemn hymn and suddenly blast a vibrant pop song that the person loved to dance to, or, like you said, EDM or a gritty rock anthem, does the room's energy just completely shatter?
It does, but in a necessary way.
I mean, how does introducing a specific, highly personal theme, like transforming the space into a reflection of a nature lover with earthy tones, or a musician with sheet music and instruments everywhere, how does that actually change the psychological space?
It's a huge shift.
Doesn't it risk feeling wildly inappropriate to the older generation in the room?
That tension you are describing is exactly what makes this shift so powerful. The energy absolutely shatters, and it rebuilds into something entirely different.
Rebuild.
Yes, that is precisely the point. When you change the sensory input from universally somber to specifically personal, you fundamentally change the permission structure in the room.
The permission structure, I love that phrase. What does that actually look like in practice?
Let's break down the physical reality of a traditional funeral. When you walk into a quiet room with somber music, your nervous system responds to those cues.
You physically tense up.
Exactly. Your shoulders tense, you whisper, you hold your breath. You are given the psychological permission to only feel one thing: solemnity.
You feel like you have to behave.
Right. You're not permitted to laugh, you're not permitted to feel joy, and you're certainly not permitted to tap your foot.
No way.
But when a family chooses to play an upbeat pop song or decorates the room with bright, earthy colors to honor a nature lover, they are sending a new set of sensory cues to the attendees' brains.
They're hacking the environment.
Exactly. You are giving the attendees a new permission structure. You're giving them permission to feel a complex spectrum of emotions.
That's incredible.
You are telling them it is okay to feel joy, to feel deep nostalgia, to smile through their tears when they hear that rock anthem.
Yeah.
By surrounding them with the sensory reality of who that person was, you are mentally transporting the attendees back to when that person was alive, vibrant, and active in the world.
So you're rewinding the clock for them mentally.
You are actively changing the psychological focus of the room from the single tragic moment of their death to the vast, rich span of their entire life.
Wow. You are shifting the focus from the end of the story back to the adventure of the story itself.
Precisely.
And that ties perfectly into the visual element. We see this a lot now. The photo boards, the massive slideshows, the video tributes set to carefully chosen music.
Oh, they're everywhere now.
They are. These visual arrays allow attendees to see the journey of the individual's life, from their awkward childhood photos right up to their later years.
And that visual journey acts as a profound psychological anchor. Think about the nature of sudden grief.
It's blinding.
It is. When someone passes away, especially if it is sudden, the minds of their loved ones become obsessively fixated on the very end of the timeline. The hospital bed, the sudden phone call. The grief creates a tunnel vision that only sees the conclusion.
Right. The brain just loops the ending over and over again. It's like you can't see past that final day.
But a thoughtfully organized slideshow or video tribute actively combats that tunnel vision. It creates a focal point for reflection that stretches the timeline back out to its proper proportions.
Because you sit there in the dark and suddenly you see them as a goofy 7-year-old missing their front teeth.
Yes.
You see them at their high school graduation. You see the weddings, the messy family vacations, the quiet moments holding a new puppy.
Precisely. You are witnessing the full arc. You are reminding the brain of the journey. And witnessing that full arc provides a profound sense of completeness to the human mind.
We really are hardwired for stories, aren't we?
We are narrative creatures. We need to see the beginning, middle, and end. It reminds attendees of all the vibrant chapters that came before the final one, which provides a deep, stabilizing sense of closure that a standard, unpersonalized ceremony simply cannot offer.
It provides comfort by grounding the loss in the context of a life well lived.
Exactly.
But here is the inherent problem with music and slideshows. They are undeniably beautiful. They're emotionally overwhelming in the absolute best way possible.
But they end.
Yes, they're entirely fleeting. When the pop song ends, the silence rushes back in. When the screen goes dark and the projector is turned off, the slideshow is done. It evaporates.
It's transient.
And that brings us to the next massive shift in how we memorialize. Because when people leave that highly emotional room, they need something tangible to physically hold on to.
Yes, the transition from the ephemeral to the physical. Tangible memories. We are talking about the evolution of printed artifacts and interactive storytelling.
And we aren't just talking about a flimsy piece of paper with a name, a date, and a blurry photo slapped on it.
No, not at all.
The level of customization happening with printed materials, funeral programs, prayer cards, memorial bookmarks is staggering. Families are customizing these with high-quality photos, highly specific color palettes that match the theme of the day, their favorite quotes, inside jokes, and deeply personal poems.
And this is an area where the cognitive load on the grieving family is vastly underestimated.
Oh, so?
When you are grieving, the idea of sitting down at a computer to format a beautifully customized program is paralyzing. You just don't have the bandwidth.
I can't even format a Word document on a good day.
Exactly. This is why we see a huge reliance on specialized resources to bridge that gap. For instance, platforms like the funeral program site have become incredibly vital because they specialize in creating coordinated, highly polished designs that reflect the individual's personality without requiring the family to pay graphic designers overnight.
I want to focus on that word polish. Why does the level of professionalism or polish matter so much?
It's an important distinction.
I mean, I could play devil's advocate here and say, shouldn't a personalized memorial feel raw? Shouldn't it feel homemade and organic? Why does it matter if the program looks like it was professionally designed?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is a fantastic nuance to explore. Why does polish matter in the context of raw grief?
Oh.
Because polish signals dignity.
Oh.
It signals respect.
Yeah.
When things look haphazard, when photos are awkwardly cropped, or text is misaligned, or the paper is cheap, it can be incredibly distracting to the human eye.
We naturally notice errors. It pulls us out of the moment.
Exactly. We naturally notice errors, but a beautifully coordinated design, a polished program, sends a subconscious signal to every person holding it. This life mattered. This legacy is worth presenting beautifully.
It elevates the individual's story. It frames their life with the dignity it deserves while still maintaining that intense personal connection.
Yes.
It's the difference between hastily taping some curled photographs to a piece of neon poster board versus curating a beautiful museum-quality gallery wall.
Exactly. And the function of these items extends far beyond the day of the service. They serve a dual purpose.
What's the other purpose?
In the immediate moment, sitting in the venue, they act as a practical guide. They tell the nervous attendee who is speaking next or what the lyrics to the song are. But their primary function is to act as lasting keepsakes.
Right.
They are physical, tactile manifestations of the narrative we discussed in the very beginning. They literally extend the memory of the service into the future.
Because months or even years later, you might be reaching for a book on your shelf and out flutters that custom bookmark with their favorite poem and their smiling face.
Then instill.
You are neurologically reconnected to that person's legacy.
Exactly. It acts as a cognitive trigger for positive memory long after the sharpest pain of the grief has dulled.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting to me. The shift toward memory tables and personal displays, we aren't just talking about a guest book on a podium anymore.
No, the guest book is just the start.
Families are showcasing intensely personal items, awards, weird hobbies, collections, vintage photographs. And the key is adding handwritten notes or little printed labels to provide context for these items.
It completely revolutionizes the physical space. It turns a static, boring folding table in the back of a room into a dynamic, interactive experience.
It turns it into an interactive museum exhibit of a person's life. Think about the psychological difference here. You aren't just staring at a generic brass urn or a standard floral arrangement trying to figure out how to feel.
Right.
You walk up to a table and you are looking at their worn-out, dirt-stained gardening gloves. And right next to them is a little handwritten index card explaining that they ruthlessly competed to grow the best heirloom tomatoes in the county every summer.
I love that example.
Or you see their dented bowling trophy from 1985. Or the impossibly complicated knitting project they never quite finished.
And if we look at human behavior in these highly charged environments, we see something remarkable happen around these tables. Guests are naturally, almost magnetically, drawn to these displays.
Yeah, they really are.
They spend significant time standing there, reflecting, and most importantly, sharing stories with whoever's standing next to them.
Let's dig into the sociology of that. Why does a table full of stuff matter so much in a room full of grieving people?
Because grief is profoundly isolating. And let's be honest, funeral environments are notoriously awkward.
They're the worst.
People are terrified of saying the wrong thing. They don't know what to do with their hands. They don't know how to approach the widow or the children. The anxiety in the room is palpable.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. Over and over. It's exhausting.
Precisely. But a memory table acts as a cognitive bridge. It breaks the ice. It gives people a safe, external, specific focal point to direct their anxious energy toward.
That is so smart.
When you stand next to a distant relative who is also looking at those worn-out gardening gloves, you don't have to scramble for a profound statement about life and death. You have a natural, easy opening to say, hey, I remember those tomatoes. I remember the summer the deer ate them all and he chased them in his bathrobe.
Oh, that is brilliant. It serves as a social lubricant in a high-anxiety environment.
It absolutely does.
It encourages connection and conversation by giving people an easy on-ramp to shared memory.
It pulls people out of their internal isolation and forces them into communal engagement, which transitions us perfectly into one of the most transformative, radical concepts in modern memorialization, the power of actual physical participation.
Yes, okay. We are talking about moving from being an audience to being a community. This is a massive shift. The idea is to intentionally involve attendees in the service to create a vastly more engaging, immersive experience.
It is a complete departure from the traditional model of mourning.
How so?
Well, in a standard historical service, you have a rigid hierarchy. You have an officiant, usually a religious figure, standing at the front of the room, actively speaking, and you have a congregation sitting rigidly in pews, passively receiving the words.
They are an audience watching a performance of grief.
That's exactly it. But the shift we are seeing now flips that dynamic completely. Families are explicitly inviting guests to cross that invisible barrier.
They're being asked to step up.
Yes. They're being asked to share memories out loud, to write messages, or to participate in symbolic physical activities. We are talking about the physical act of walking to the front to light a candle, or collectively placing individual flowers on a casket, or taking a moment to write down a memory and physically drop it into a customized memory jar.
It's so much more active.
What we are witnessing here is the acknowledgement of the kinetics of grief. We are moving from passive observation to active physical participation.
The kinetics of grief. Unpack that for me. What does that mean for the nervous system of the person attending?
Grief is, at its core, a massive amount of pent-up emotional and physiological energy.
It really sits in the body.
It does. Your body is flooded with stress hormones, sorrow, and anxiety, but in a traditional funeral setting, you were told to sit perfectly still and be quiet. You have all this energy with absolutely nowhere for it to go.
It's like revving a car engine in neutral.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you give grieving people a physical action to perform, you give that chaotic energy a safe, structured outlet.
So the action itself is a release valve.
Yes. The physical, tactile act of holding a pen, writing down a memory, walking across the room, and dropping it into a jar. That physical movement allows the body to actively process the emotional weight. They are doing something with their sorrow.
And it isn't just about the individual processing their own grief. It's about what happens when you look around the room.
Absolutely.
You aren't just sitting alone in your personal sadness. You are literally watching dozens of other people, friends, family, coworkers, stand up and perform the exact same physical act of love and remembrance right alongside you.
You're physically witnessing the web of connection. You are seeing the actual, tangible support network that surrounds the grieving family manifest in real time. It reinforces the reality that they are not alone.
Now, I want to challenge another aspect of this participation because it sounds like it could easily go off the rails.
Okay, let's hear it.
The concept of personalized eulogies and readings. It is heavily encouraged now to have multiple speakers to provide a well-rounded perspective of the person's life.
Yes, the multi-speaker approach.
I have to ask, is there a massive risk here? If you open the floor to multiple people, aren't you risking having too many cooks in the kitchen? You are inviting highly emotional, grieving people to get up and speak publicly.
Right, which is inherently risky.
Exactly. What if they ramble? What if they say something weird or it ruins the carefully curated tone?
From an event planning perspective, there is absolutely a logistical risk. But from a psychological and emotional perspective, the payoff is almost always worth the gamble.
Why is that?
The reason multiple speakers is so vital is based on the mosaic theory of a human life.
The mosaic theory. I like the sound of that.
Think about it. No single human being possesses the complete, definitive picture of another human being. We all only know the specific facets that were presented to us.
That's very true.
The way a person interacts with their spouse is entirely different from how they act with their college buddies, which is different from how they mentor a junior coworker, which is different from how they play with their grandchildren.
So if you only have one person speak like the eldest child, or a priest who barely knew them, you are only getting one tile of the mosaic.
Exactly. You get a flat, one-dimensional biography. But by democratizing the eulogy process and inviting multiple speakers from different eras and areas of their life, you build a multi-dimensional portrait.
You see the whole picture.
You do. You might get a story from a neighbor about a quiet act of kindness that the immediate family never even knew about.
That is incredibly powerful. It means the attendees actually leave the service knowing the person better than when they arrived.
Which is a beautiful gift.
And it doesn't have to be a professionally polished 20-minute speech, does it?
Not at all. In fact, the most impactful moments are often the briefest. A simple, heartfelt, nervous memory shared by a shy friend adds immense depth and richness to the collective understanding of who that person was. It combats the isolation of grief perfectly.
Because when you act as a participant rather than an observer, the entire memorial morphs from a formal obligation into a massive collective act of love.
Exactly.
Okay, so if we zoom out, we can see the progression here. We've changed what happens at a service by focusing on the narrative and hacking the sensory environment. We've changed who speaks by democratizing the eulogies and making it highly participatory.
We're rebuilding the whole thing.
We really are. It logically follows that we are also fundamentally changing where it happens and how people tune in.
Which brings us to setting the scene. This involves the intersection of unique physical locations, the integration of ancient traditions, and the deployment of modern digital upgrades.
The shift in location is perhaps the most visually obvious change. For a century, the default has been a funeral home parlor or a specific place of worship.
Those were pretty much the only options.
But now, families are intentionally choosing unique, highly personal locations. We are seeing memorials in national parks, on specific, meaningful beaches, in the backyards of family homes, or in art galleries, literally anywhere that held deep significance for the individual.
And if we analyze the psychological impact of the environment, outdoor services in particular offer a profoundly different emotional container for grief than a building with four walls.
There really is something inherently comforting about being in nature when confronted with the finality of death, isn't there?
There really is.
Why is that? Why does a beach feel better than a parlor room?
It comes down to scale and perspective. When you are grieving inside a room with four walls and a low ceiling, the grief can feel suffocating. It fills the room. It feels larger than you.
They're very claustrophobic.
Exactly. But when you step outside into a forest or onto a beach, nature provides an infinite scale. You are suddenly reminded of the massive, enduring cycles of life.
You hear the ocean waves crashing or the wind in the trees, and it's a reminder that the world is still turning.
Precisely. The changing seasons, the enduring landscape, it holds the grief differently. It diffuses the intensity.
It makes it feel more manageable.
Yes. The natural surroundings actually become an active participant in the experience, creating a peaceful, reflective atmosphere that naturally lowers the collective blood pressure of the attendees.
But I want to make a very clear distinction here, because I think a lot of people assume that if you have a funeral on a beach, or if you heavily personalize the music and the location, you are turning your back on tradition entirely.
Right, that's a common misconception.
People think you are throwing away your religion or your cultural heritage, but that isn't the case at all, is it?
Not in the slightest. And this is a crucial balancing act that families are navigating beautifully. Personalization and tradition are not mutually exclusive.
They can coexist.
In fact, they are at their most powerful when they are synthesized. Incorporating ancient cultural or religious elements is often a vital part of honoring the individual's core identity.
It's about merging the two, using the ancient rituals to provide the structure and the personalization to provide the unique layer.
Exactly.
How does a family actually pull that off without it feeling, disjointed?
It requires collaboration with clergy or officiants who understand this new landscape. The ancient ritual, whether it's a specific prayer, a cultural rite, or a religious liturgy, provides a deeply familiar, comforting container.
It's an anchor.
It is a psychological safety net. It tells the older generation, and really everyone in the room, what to expect, which is intensely grounding when emotions are unpredictable.
So what does this all mean? The tradition builds the walls of the house, so to speak?
Yes. And the personal elements, the memory tables, the specific music, the outdoor location, furnish the house.
Mhm.
They fill that ancient container with the unique, vibrant essence of the modern individual.
We are essentially hybridizing the memorial experience.
That's a great word for it.
You can have the profound, timeless comfort of a centuries-old religious rite, but it's taking place in the peaceful, natural surroundings of a beach that the person surfed at every morning.
Exactly. Best of both worlds.
But then the evolution goes a step further. We don't just stop at the physical location. We enter the modern era with digital enhancements.
Technology is fundamentally obliterating the traditional boundaries of the funeral experience.
We are seeing the rise of permanent digital memorials, high-definition live streaming, interactive online guest books, and dedicated memorial websites.
It's incredible how fast this has caught on.
It really is. We are even seeing families incorporate QR codes directly into their printed materials. You get a beautiful, polished program from somewhere like the funeral program site, and right there on the back is a QR code that links attendees to a massive online repository of extra content, video tributes, and voice notes.
This creates a fascinating paradox. Think about the juxtaposition we just discussed. You might be standing barefoot on a beach, completely grounded in the raw, natural elements, experiencing the physical reality of the wind and the ocean. But in your hand, you are holding a beautifully printed program with a QR code that connects you to the entire digital globe.
It feels like it shouldn't work. It feels like bringing an iPad to a sacred ritual should ruin the vibe.
Right, it seems contradictory.
But it actually enhances it.
It enhances it because both elements serve a distinct, vital purpose. The outdoor setting grounds your nervous system in the physical present. The digital elements, however, completely destroy the physical boundaries of geography and time.
Right, because grief isn't localized anymore. Families are spread across the globe.
Exactly. If an elderly relative in another country is too frail to travel, or a childhood best friend is deployed overseas and cannot physically stand on that beach, live streaming and interactive online guest books allow them to actively participate in the communal grieving process.
They aren't just left out in the cold.
No, they can still be part of that mosaic.
It ensures that the service is completely borderless. And beyond geography, it solves the problem of time.
Time is a big one.
A physical funeral is a discrete event. It happens on a Tuesday at 2 p.m., and then it's over. But a live stream can be recorded. A memorial website stays up forever. It makes the memorial timeless.
It creates an enduring digital legacy. The service doesn't just evaporate when the sun goes down and everyone drives home. It lives on in the digital space, permanently accessible whenever someone, years down the line, needs to feel connected to that person again.
Okay, I have to stop and take a breath here.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. Because as we talk through all of this, as we analyze the psychology of gathering stories, curating the perfect music to hack the permission structure, building elaborate interactive memory tables, organizing multiple speakers to build a mosaic, picking a breathtaking natural location, coordinating with clergy, setting up live streams, designing polished programs with QR codes.
It is a massive undertaking.
It sounds incredible. It sounds like the most beautiful, profound tribute imaginable. But if I am putting myself in the shoes of a grieving spouse or a child who just lost a parent, it also sounds utterly, terrifyingly overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely.
How is a family supposed to produce a bespoke multimedia event while they can barely remember to eat breakfast?
And that brings us to the absolute crucial reality check of this entire deep dive, the balancing act, navigating practicality, budget, and the ultimate emotional impact.
We have to talk about the friction here. Because while personalization is beautiful in theory, it is essential to consider the hard, unforgiving practical aspects: time, budget, and logistical nightmare.
This raises an important question for anyone navigating this. How does a family actually achieve this highly curated, bespoke experience during what is scientifically proven to be one of the most exhausting, cognitively challenging times of their lives?
Right, because grief brain is a real thing.
It is. The phenomenon of grief brain is real. The cognitive overload of planning a massive event while experiencing acute trauma is intensely difficult. And if not managed, it can completely rob the family of their own ability to mourn.
So what is the solution? Do we just go back to the pre-printed, boring, traditional form because it's easier?
Not at all. The secret is a very specific philosophy: curation over exhaustion. Focusing on a few key, high-impact elements can help create a deeply meaningful service without plunging the family into overwhelming stress.
Curation over exhaustion. I want you, the listener, to really absorb that. If you ever find yourself having to plan one of these, or if you are the type of person thinking ahead to your own eventual service, the goal is not to create an exhausting, chaotic theme park of a person's life.
Exactly. You do not have to do every single thing we have discussed today. You don't need the live 10-piece band and the remote beach location
Mhm.
and the 40-minute professionally edited documentary video and the elaborate memory jars and the fully catered reception.
If you try to do all of that, you aren't mourning. You are an event planner in a state of panic.
Exactly. The key is to identify the 2 or 3 elements that will yield the highest emotional resonance for your specific loved one, and then rely heavily on experienced providers and available resources to simplify the actual execution.
This is where outsourcing the logistics becomes a form of self-care for the grieving family.
It really is.
By using specialized templates or coordinated design packages from places like the funeral program site, or hiring an experienced celebrant to manage the speakers, the family can achieve their highly personalized vision efficiently.
It strips away the unnecessary friction of logistics. If you, as a grieving child, are agonizing over formatting margins on a Word document to print your own programs at 3 a.m. the night before the funeral, your nervous system is shot.
You're just running on
You
fumes.
are not present. You are operating entirely on stress adrenaline.
But by relying on tools and resources that streamline the practical, tedious stuff, you protect your own emotional bandwidth. You allow the family to actually sit in the front row, take a deep breath, and be emotionally present to experience the healing that a beautiful memorial promises.
The ultimate goal here isn't to put on a show. The goal is to create a service that feels intensely personal and authentic, while remaining entirely manageable during a dark, challenging time. Manageable authenticity.
Manageable authenticity. That is exactly it. And that leads us directly to the ultimate emotional impact of all this effort. Because when a family achieves that manageable authenticity, the result is truly profound. It provides unique space for reflection, connection, and deep healing.
Because when a service is genuinely authentic, it resonates on a frequency that a generic ritual simply cannot reach.
It rings true.
It is a true, unfiltered reflection of the love and remembrance the family holds. By focusing on what made the person unique, their specific humor, their specific flaws, their specific triumphs, the tribute provides lasting comfort.
It completely reframes the experience. It transforms a day of heavy, suffocating mourning into a vibrant, true celebration of life.
It really changes the tone.
It changes the internal narrative of everyone in the room. Instead of sitting there thinking, look at this terrible thing we have lost, you walk out of the room thinking, look at this incredible, unique human being we were lucky enough to have known.
The structure of tradition gently holds the space, but the incredible depth of personalization fills that space with enduring meaning.
So let's take a moment to synthesize this incredible, expansive journey we've just been on together.
It's been a lot of ground covered.
It has. We started by exploring the sheer psychology of uncovering a life's narrative, how gathering those defining traits and specific stories acts as the crucial first step in communal healing. We talked about the neuroscience of engaging the senses, using specific music and visual timelines to hack the permission structure of the room and create a shared, synchronized emotional experience.
We examined the absolute necessity of tangible keepsakes, like beautifully polished printed materials, and how interactive memory tables act as cognitive bridges, giving anxious attendees a physical focal point that sparks natural connection and storytelling.
We discussed the profound kinetic power of shifting from a passive, seated audience to an active, moving community through physical participation and the democratization of eulogies. We looked at how to set the scene by brilliantly synthesizing ancient, grounding traditions with boundary-destroying modern digital technology and unique natural locations.
And finally, we grounded all of these lofty, artful ideas in the cold reality of practicality, the vital importance of curation over exhaustion, and outsourcing logistics so that the focus remains entirely on emotional presence, not logistical stress.
So why does all of this matter to you, the listener? Why should you spend your valuable time deep diving into the mechanics and psychology of funeral planning when you're perfectly healthy and going about your day?
Because this topic touches the one inescapable universal truth of the human experience. We will all eventually experience the profound loss of someone we deeply love.
It's unavoidable.
And eventually we will all leave a legacy of our own for others to navigate.
Understanding that there are rich, vibrant options far beyond the rigid, traditional, somber script fundamentally transforms our relationship with end-of-life celebrations.
It changes everything.
It takes something that is almost universally dreaded, something we usually shove into the darkest corner of our minds, and reframes it as a profound, beautiful opportunity.
An opportunity for rich storytelling, for honoring true authenticity, and for forging incredibly deep community connections right at the exact moment when people need it the most.
It takes the fear out of the inevitable and replaces it with intention and agency. And that brings me to a final provocative thought that I want to leave you with today. Something for you to genuinely mull over as you go about the rest of your week, maybe while you're driving or walking the dog.
I am very curious to hear this.
Based on all the artful, deeply psychological ideas we discussed today, from the customized permission structure of music, to the interactive artifacts on a memory table, to the unique outdoor locations or the digital borderless guest books, I want you to imagine something. If someone were to design a highly personalized, manageable, deeply authentic deep dive into your life story, right now, today, what are the 2 or 3 unique elements that absolutely positively have to be there?
Oh, wow.
What is the one specific song, the one strange or beautiful item on a memory table, or the one defining personality trait that would make your friends walk into that room, look around, and immediately say, yes, this is exactly them?
That is a remarkably powerful question to consider. It forces you to look at your own legacy in real time.
It really does. It makes you think not just about how you want to be remembered, but how you're actually choosing to live right now, today. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this massive, expansive exploration into the art and psychology of remembrance. We deeply appreciate you being part of the conversation and bringing your curiosity to a heavy but beautiful topic. Until next time, take care.